The war began as a European conflict and ended up becoming a global war. Its spark was ignited by the assassination of the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne in 1914, and it concluded with a fierce struggle that lasted for 4 years, involving more than 70 countries. The war resulted in the loss of around 22 million lives and led to significant political changes, as well as revolutions in numerous countries. Although the immediate cause of the outbreak of World War was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria by a Serbian student named Gavrilo Princip on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo. However, scholars attribute a series of indirect causes that paved the way for the war. These include the escalating tensions in international relations at the beginning of the 20th century due to a series of crises, such as the Balkan Crisis and the struggle of European powers to control the region and expel the Ottoman Empire from it. As a result, Austria-Hungary annexed Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1908. Leading to the outbreak of the First and Second Balkan Wars. In addition, the rivalry between France, Germany, and Italy over influence in North Africa, along with the growth of nationalist sentiments within Europe and the aspirations of certain minority groups for independence, further strained relations between nations. These tensions escalated in 1913, leading to a deterioration of international relations. Additionally, the increasing economic and commercial competition among imperialist powers to secure influence globally and control markets for their industrial and financial surplus, as well as access to raw materials, further fueled tensions. This was coupled with the formation of political and military alliances among imperialist nations, leading to an arms race and a significant increase in military expenditures. After the assassination of the Archduke of Austria, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia on July 23, 1914, demanding a response within 48 hours to 10 demands. Despite Serbia's acceptance of most of these demands, Austria-Hungary rejected it and declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1914, disregarding international efforts to resolve the dispute. After Austria declared war on Serbia, the European alliance mechanism began to unfold. Russia supported Serbia and declared war on Austria in its desire to control the Straits, as it was displeased with the German prince ruling Albania and the military cooperation between Germany and the Ottoman Empire. This led Germany to declare war on Russia on August 1, 1914. Followed by France 2 days later. Germany's motivations for the war stemmed from its desire to achieve political and economic gains. As for Britain, it sought to eliminate German and Prussian expansion. Soon after, on August 4, 1914, Britain also declared war on Germany. On August 6, 1914, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Austria and Hungary declared war on Russia, followed by France and England declaring war on Austria on August 10 and 11, 1914 respectively. Two groups were formed. The first was called the Allies' Triple Entente, consisting of France, Britain, Serbia, Montenegro, and Belgium. The second group was known as the Central Powers, composed of Austria, Hungary, and Germany. Later, Japan joined the Allies in order to expand its influence in China and gain control over the German-controlled region of Shandong. China also aligned itself with the Allies. Initially, the Ottoman Empire maintained a stance of neutrality. However, it was eventually compelled to align itself with the Central Powers on November 3 in defense of its threatened borders against the encroachment of some allied countries. As the war escalated and the conflict widened, alliances formed based on either territorial ambitions or desires for independence. The war lasted for over 4 years, during which it transformed from a European conflict into a global war. The European War 1914-1916 witnessed two distinct periods, the first known as the War of Movement and the second as the Trench Warfare. As the war progressed, it became characterized by static positions, with opposing armies digging trenches, fortifying them, and preparing for battle. New weapons such as tanks and aircraft were introduced and utilized. The first campaign on the Western Front began on August 20, 1914, after Germany successfully occupied Brussels, the capital of Belgium, allowing them to advance into the northern part of France. However, the balance quickly shifted during the Battle of the Marne on September 6, as France halted the German expansion and forced them into a defensive position in the trenches along the Swiss border. In 1915, the Central Powers, primarily Germany, achieved several victories against the Allies. The use of submarines played a significant role in shifting the balance of power. They dealt a major blow to the Russians in the Battle of Gorlice Tarn W, occupied Poland, and captured most cities in Lithuania. They also attempted to cut off communication lines between the Russian armies and their bases in an effort to eliminate them. Despite achieving some partial victories against the Germans, the Russians suffered significant losses, including approximately 325,000 prisoners, which hindered their ability to recover. The German success against the Russians led to the subjugation of the Balkans. Austrian and German forces crossed the Danube River to engage the Serbs and inflicted a severe defeat upon them. Additionally, the Germans were able to achieve clear victories on several fronts in the same year. Their front remained cohesive in the face of attacks from the French and British armies. On the other hand, the Ottoman Empire played a significant role for the Central Powers due to its control over the Dardanelles and the Bosphorus Straits. These straits were closed off to Russian supplies by France and Britain. In response, the Allies launched the Dardanelles campaign on March 18, 1915, in an attempt to gain control of the straits. However, they were defeated and forced to withdraw by the end of 1915. This led to a naval blockade on the shores of Syria, exacerbating the economic situation in the region. A clash occurred between the Ottoman Empire and the British presence in an attempt to expel the British from the Arab region. However, the British ultimately tightened their grip on the Suez Canal and occupied Baghdad. They also suppressed revolutions that broke out in Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. Furthermore, they incited Sharif Hussein to declare the Great Arab Revolt on March 10, 1916, which contributed to the occupation of the Ottoman Empire. The intensity of the battles escalated throughout 1916, witnessed by the 7-month-long Battle of Verdun and the 4-month-long Battle of the Somme. Both fought on French soil. It was during these battles that tanks were introduced for the first time on the battlefield. Germany was forced to retreat, and its trained army suffered heavy losses, leading them to rely on young, inexperienced recruits. Despite the English failure to capture Gaza in April-May 1916, they succeeded in occupying Jerusalem in December of the same year. This allowed them to advance further north and occupy cities such as Damascus, Homs, Hama, and Aleppo. The year 1916 was notable for the submarine warfare, which ultimately led to the United States' entry into the war. During this year, a naval battle took place in the North Sea between the German and British fleets, known as the Battle of Jutland. In an attempt to starve Britain and force its surrender, the Germans resorted to sinking any merchant ship, including several American vessels. This action prompted the United States to enter the war on the side of the Allies on April 6, 1917. Prior to its entry into the war, the United States adhered to the Monroe Doctrine, which advocated for American neutrality in its foreign policy towards Europe and non-interference in American affairs by any European power. However, the Zionist pressures following the Balfour Declaration by Britain, as well as the fear of Mexico's alliance with Germany to regain its territories, led the U.S. Congress to approve entry into the war. The Germans capitalized on the success of the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in October 1917 and the signing of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk on March 3, 1918, which resulted in Russia's withdrawal from the war. The withdrawal of Russia from the war encouraged the German leadership to redirect their forces from the Eastern Front to fight against the British and the French. In March 1918, the Germans managed to break the British Fifth Army, and intense battles ensued, resulting in significant loss of life and resources for both sides. On the other hand, the Allies benefited from the immense resources and supplies provided by the United States, which significantly strengthened their war effort. They were able to tighten the blockade on Germany, weakening its position. By the summer of 1918, Around 10,000 soldiers were being sent to France every day, further bolstering the Allied forces. The United States also sent a battleship to the Scapa Flow water area to join the British Grand Fleet in escorting convoys. Additionally, several battalions of the U.S. Marine Corps were sent to France to provide support on the ground. In an attempt to prevent the Allies from benefiting from America's entry into the war, Germany launched the spring offensive of 1918, Operation Michael, along the Western Front on March 21, aiming to divide British and French forces. They hoped to end the war before the arrival of the significant number of American troops. The Allies launched a counterattack in the Battle of Amiens on August 8, 1918, which paved the way for the 100 Days Offensive. Over 400 tanks and 120,000 Allied troops participated in the battle. Several significant battles followed, including the Battle of Albert, Battle of Arras, including the Battle of Scarpe, and the Battle of Drocourt-Queant-Line. These battles forced Germany to retreat and eventually seek an armistice. In September 1918, American and French forces launched a final offensive against the Hindenburg Line in the Battle of the Argonne Forest. A week later, American and French units cooperated in penetrating the Champagne region of France, initiating the Battle of Blanquemont Ridge. The German forces were compelled to retreat towards the Belgian border. Additionally, the Canadian Corps and the British 1st and 2nd Armies successfully breached the Hindenburg Line, leading to the Second Battle of Cambrai. The forces of the Central Powers collapsed rapidly, with Bulgaria being the first to sign an armistice on September 29, 1918, in Salonika. The collapse continued with subsequent surrender agreements. Germany signed the Armistice of Compiègne with the Allies inside a railway carriage on November 11, 1918. At 5:00 p.m., the ceasefire came into effect at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The war resulted in significant human losses, with over 8.5 million soldiers killed and 20 million wounded. More than 13 million civilians were killed, and over 29 million people, including civilians, were captured or taken as prisoners. The Serbian army suffered the largest losses, with 3/4 of its soldiers killed or wounded, 130,000 killed, and 135,000 wounded. The war also led to the capture of 6 million prisoners, the occupation of 20 million civilians in 1915, and the displacement of over 10 million people throughout Europe. It left 3 million women widowed and affected 6 million children.